You've got oyster shell scale on your doggo crabapple tree and what to do about it. Oyster shell scale is a pretty recent pest as far as its outbreak levels are. It's been attacking cotoneaster trees, toba hawthorns or snowbird hawthorns, as well as apples and mountain ash. You can treat it with dormant oil. Treatment with dormant oil, you have to wait until the nighttime temperatures are 0 degrees or above, and you have to do it before the leaves come out. And that's a mechanical means of killing the pest. So you're basically suffocating any of the eggs as they emerge. You can use a summer oil when the pest is in its crawler stage. Generally, they're in the crawler stage within the first 2 weeks of June, so you could do a back-to-back application week after week with the summer oil. And summer oil is pretty close to the same thing as dormant oil, except it's not, it's registered for use on plants that have leafed out, so it's not going to suffocate the leaves on your tree. Otherwise, you can contract a pest control service that may be able to apply a systemic type of insecticide, which will act more as a chemical means to kill the pest through poisoning it, rather than a physical means by suffocation, which is what dormant oil would be. So dormant oil would be, if I'm a pest, lock myself up in an airtight bag, then I would suffocate to death, whereas a systemic insecticide would be as if my grapes that I've already eaten were laced with rat poison. Okay, so you have a big tree, you're concerned about using systemic insecticides because you do harvest and use the fruit. You're very right to be concerned. The systemic insecticide will poison you if you do eat the fruit, because the fruit will absorb some of that chemical. I think I have to call my pest control guy, but a year, minimum year, maybe up to 2 years before you can use that fruit. Whereas the dormant oil, spraying it without commercial application equipment would be a little hard. You could try to use a hose end applicator with a tall enough step ladder to get up as high up into the canopy as possible, or contract a pest control service to come in and spray the canopy for you with their spray nozzles. Can, you know, spray up to 100 feet or more, depending on what equipment that they're using. I am a certified pesticide applicator, but I don't do a lot of pesticide application. I, like you, prefer the non-toxic, non-chemical methods of pesticide application, or pest control anyways. Yes, sir?
What's the right, how do you treat it? What's the right thing to do?
I would recommend cutting the damaged portion off. Once you see the damage, the insect is either in there or has already left your tree to go and lay eggs in other trees. So you could cut the damaged portion off. The tree is going to respond by sending 2 or more leaders up. In that case, to provide your tree with the best structure possible long term, cut all but 1 leader out of that tree, so that you have a single leader. That's your best structure. Whereas if you have a wishbone of a tree, it's gonna peel apart like a wishbone as well. I'm sorry, I have to ask you a question. Is it a spruce, a pine, or a fir? And I'd like to teach you how to tell the difference between those 3 species. A fir has flat needles. You can't roll them between your fingers. A spruce has squarish needles, and those you can roll between your fingers. And pine trees, the needles come out in clusters of 2, 3, or 5 needles out of 1 point. And it's something that I get all the time. I have a pine tree, I have a fir tree. 95% of the times, it's a spruce tree. Yeah.
When you cut it below where the...
Cut it below the damage.
How far?
I would say 1 or 2 growth points below where you see the damage. So let's say, I don't have a piece of spruce here or chalk or anything. But okay, so I'll draw in the air if you guys have a good imagination. So you've got your growth point, and then you've got a tuft of growth, and then another year's worth of growth, and more growth coming out. I would probably take it back 2 years worth of growth. Yeah. I'll just toss it in the garbage. Well, if you throw it in the garbage, if there are any insects, eggs, larvae, or adults in there, they'll die pretty quick in the garbage, getting buried. Yeah.
But like on that knot there.
Yeah, so you have a birch tree with the white bark, but you've noticed over the past couple of years that it's starting to turn black. And the reason why it's turning black is because there's aphids up in the tree that are dripping out sap, and you're right, it is mold. It's exactly what's growing on your tree. It's called sooty mold. The sooty mold is not going to harm your tree. It's more a telltale sign or a symptom of something else causing the sooty mold. So if you control the aphid population or reduce the population of aphids, it will reduce the sooty mold growing on the tree, as well as, say, if you have a deck or a patio nearby, that sooty mold will grow on your deck, patio. It'll even grow on concrete as long as it's got a food source.
You have to have a poisonous type thing to get rid of that?
For aphids, they're more of a cosmetic pest, so I wouldn't recommend anything more than a very low toxicity, like an insecticidal soap, or even just a sharp blast of water to try to displace them and reduce the population. You're not going to get rid of them, but you can reduce.
Yeah, it's a big tree.
Like, could I try that oil before I get to an insecticidal soap?
I have.
I mean, I don't want to try and just.
Yeah, I'd have to read up on the life cycle of aphids. I'm kind of embarrassed. Do they overwinter as an adult, or as an egg, or as both? Yeah, it's probably both overwinter as an adult and an egg. You might get the adults with the dormant oil, but not necessarily the eggs. And aphids, as you know, are born pregnant. They're parthenogenic. So I would say a contact insecticide rather than a mechanical means. Hit the populations while they're young, especially with aphids being born pregnant. Then you can keep the population low throughout this whole season. So if you're thinking of spraying for aphids in mid-July, late August and September, by that time there's so many of them there. You know, you can spray and kill the adults, but you're not going to get all of them, and they're just going to proliferate again. So monitoring is really probably the most important aspect of any type of pest control program.
Like the leaves are shiny at times.
Yeah, it sounds to me like it's a combination of two things. I'll just repeat the question. She's got a row of columnar aspens or tower poplars. They're both very closely related species. They're dying from the top down. The bark has a funny color to it, but the leaves also have a bit of a shine to it. So we have two problems. The dying from the top down and discoloration on the bark sounds to me like it's canker, which is a fungal pathogen that's inhibiting sap from traveling up and down in the tree, mostly, and water traveling up in the tree. So yes, I would cut out the cankered portion below where you see the last sign of infection. And you can see it in the wood. When you make a cut, you'll see an irregular discolored pattern. It's not going to be like perfect growth rings in a healthy tree where all you see is circular rings. You'll see a discoloration and a pattern that's abnormal. And the shininess on the leaves is aphids. So you would need to control the aphid population, and that's why the columnar aspens are full of bees, is because the aphids are exuding honeydew, and the yellow jackets are being attracted to the honeydew and basically farming it and shooing away aphid predators such as ladybird beetles and ladybird beetle larvae.